Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Now, there are certain concepts that are discussed here in this chapter that we have to know in order to state certain differences and bear in mind certain differences to avoid confusion when we talk about these things or these notions from the grammatical point of view or from the real point of view. Okay, at the very beginning, you know that here he says, well, we are going to read introduction and then I will explain the rest and you complete the reading at home. Who wants to start reading the introduction? Okay, Laura.
Yes.
No, it's just Laura, Maria Laura.
Thank you. The grammatical backbone. One of the most important characteristics of language is the presence of grammar. The grammar of a language is simply the way it combines smaller elements, such as words, into larger elements, such as sentences. Every human language has a grammar. Indeed, every human language has quite a lot of grammar. And I mean every language, without exception. It is a grotesque error to believe that somewhere out there are languages with little or no grammar.
Who said so, apart from trust? That we have already discussed.
You? Chomsky?
Yeah, you said it.
This is true.
Apart from me, I am so important.
Chris.
When you read supposedly, okay, what is linguistics by whom? By Crystal, you know that he said so too. Grammar is everywhere. People say, I want to learn English without, but not with grammar, without grammar. Poor thing, okay? Because you see that is impossible. The moment you say hello, you are using grammar. You see, intuitively, unconsciously, call it whatever names you want. But you see that is grammar. And something to say here. At the very beginning, Trask says, the grammar of a language is simply the way it combines smaller elements such as words, into larger elements such as sentences. Really only words? Or he has already, when he defines this, he is taking into account one level, the level of words, morphology, but before that we have morphemes, and before that we have phonemes, okay, and those belong to the grammatical sphere too, okay, so, listen, it's not only words, the point is that for what he's going to discuss here in this chapter, what he's going to concentrate upon is words, but really when we use a language, we are combining not only words, but before words we combine them into morphemes, and before that phonemes and so on, as we have already said, right? Well, so, all languages have grammar, all languages. The difference is that some languages use more grammatical rules, some others fewer grammatical rules of this type, that type, but grammar exists everywhere and it is present in all languages, absolutely. Right? Yes, here we go.
Even the most remote languages, spoken by the least technologically advanced peoples, have masses and masses of grammar. Just to cite one example, John Heyman's book describing a grammar of Hua, a language spoken in a remote valley of New Guinea by a people with the Stone Age technology who only made contact with outsiders a few decades ago, runs to many hundreds of dense pages. And Heyman would certainly not claim that this description is complete.
Okay, so that will be to reinforce the idea that Crystal expresses saying that there are no languages, primitive, right? Okay, this reinforces that concept, that there are no primitive languages, even Hua, okay, that belongs to this group of people, you know that it has, according to the ones who study so, I don't know the language as you can imagine, but according to them it has tons of grammar, right? Yes.
The biggest descriptions of English grammar run a couple of thousand pages, and are unquestionably not complete even yet. It's not that English has more grammar than Hua, it's just that English grammar has been studied for much longer and by far more people than the grammar of Hua. Even artificial languages like Esperanto have masses of grammar, though in my experience the proponents of these languages often seem to be unaware of this fact. Linguists, practitioners of linguistics, the scientific study of language, regard it as one of their central tasks to find out what the grammars of human language are like. Linguists who specialize in the study of grammar are grammarians. What grammarians try to do is to identify the rules of grammar that govern each particular language.
Because if you know the rules of that grammar, it would be easier for you to speak the language properly.
We need to clarify this rule of grammar, since it is frequently misunderstood. Perhaps your school English teacher issued you with stern warnings like, don't end a sentence with a preposition, or don't use a split infinitive, or you should say it's I and not it's me. Then again, maybe she didn't. Not many schools try to teach English grammar these days. But statements like these, familiar or not, are not what I mean by rules of grammar. They aren't really rules at all. They're merely someone's opinions about what constitute good usage of English.
That is a great difference that we read in Crystal too, okay? Out of the influence of Latin, we were taught to say this and not that. But those are different levels of correctness. Appropriateness, not correctness. Because correctness has to do with the rule of grammar, but that is not a rule of grammar. This is just usage. So usage goes one side, and rules of grammar go another side. Okay, the best thing to do is to go hand in hand, but sometimes they don't. Okay, why, for example, not to use the split infinitive? What's the reason? Just because you don't like it. But grammatically, it is correct. It is appropriate. It is right. Okay. Well, yes.
Okay. Rules are rather different. Consider the business of driving a car. When you press down on the accelerator, the car speeds up. When you step on the brake, the car slows down. When you turn the steering wheel to the left, the car goes left. These are some of the rules of driving. That's just the way the car works. And you can't do much about it. Opinions about good driving are things like stop for a red light, put the car in second gear when turning a corner, and speed up when the light in front of you turns amber. Of course, there's no guarantee that all of these opinions are good advice. At the same time, and the same is true about English. There's no guarantee that the opinions about using English cited above are necessarily good opinions. And in fact, I'll be arguing in Chapter 8 that all three of them are terrible opinions. Anyway, the rules of English grammar are something quite different from opinions about usage. Let's have a look at the grammar of English.
Okay, now, he provides two different examples then about rules of grammar in English. But first of all, he speaks about one aspect of linguistic description that we have to bear in mind when talking of English, and it has to do with the word order, right? Because word order is essential in English. Why? Your knowledge of grammar, I want you to show me. I want you to show me
because
your knowledge of grammar.
we can't understand
Why not?
because we need the subject.
I can understand what you're saying. Because we system.
Because we need the subject before the verb.
Why is it that we need the subject before the verb?
Because the verb doesn't give us the information needed to mark.
What kind of information is that one? Kind of Lanatas information?
Grammatical information.
Oh yes, but grammatical information is too vague a concept, you know? So we say, we need the subject in English to be overtly expressed. Because the verb, she says, does not provide grammatical information. Regarding what?
Inflection.
The person.
Inflections. The verb lacks inflections. Speak properly. Okay?
I said it.
Be appropriate. You got the notion, right? Okay. So, it lacks inflection. show what? That's why we need a subject. Person and number. To show person and number among other, no, tense is show tense. Okay, so then if you think of past tense, especially, you say went. When. Who? I, you, he, she, blah, blah. Alright, so then it lacks the appropriate inflection or the correct inflection to give the information about who you are speaking about. If you are speaking of a first person singular, plural, or whatever. That's why the subject becomes essential in English. So, can we have subject-less sentences in English?
Sí. I'm sorry.
Who supports, Lorena?
Let me think. Subjectless. Yes,
Silly.
when you are no for imperative expressions.
But
I say
it's
okay.
still
It's
you.
not
You
taking
wash the
it.
car.
I say open the door. Is it subject-less?
No,
It's not
subject.
omitted.
No, es objeto tácito.
Sí, pero it's
Omitted, implied. Because why can I have that kind of construction in English? Though we are saying just, you see that I have just said that you need a subject because the verb is not inflected to show person and number. And now the counterpart example, the counter example. So then, why is it that I can say open the door? But I wouldn't say open the door, no, but open the door.
But there's a context. There's a context. When you are either looking at the eye to somebody or you're talking on the phone, but
It is a convention. The other person
no, it's
understands.
implied. It's implied by the context.
And who is the subject necessarily when you give an order? You, that's why you can avoid it, because there is only one possible subject. Second person. The information that lacks there, what is it? Singular, plural. But as he's saying, contextually, you can know if I say, open the door, please. Okay, and I am making eye contact with her, so then she will not go to open the door. She will go. So that's why we can avoid it. So these are, let's say that imperative sentences in surface structure, in a very surface structure description, they look as if there were no subject, but really the subject is there, and it is given by the kind of sentence we are dealing with. That is an order that can be given only to a second person. Okay? Is there any other case when we don't have subject in English?
Amorphous sentences.
Amorphous sentences. They lack subjects. They have predicates.
No, you preguntaron eso.
When not.
I don't know, that's what they're going to ask
What is an amorphous sentence?
Are you talking about oración unimembre? Kind of like that?
He is the one.
Is it like an interjection?
When you say rain.
The rain, for example. Yeah.
Yes, there's
No,
no
but there is a
subject there
subject.
because there's no predicate. If there's no predicate, there's no subject. But if there's a predicate, there must be a subject somewhere.
Somewhere. Okay, in English at the beginning.
In English at the
And
beginning,
in English before
but
the verb.
but
Or
for
implied.
example, if it is implied, then the subject it is somewhere. It is implied.
Yes, but the only way you can imply a subject in English is with imperative sentences.
Yes.
Not with the rest. Okay? You always need a subject there. And when you have coordination, it is given referentially. Okay? Because you make reference in the same sentence. Now, let's say amorphous sentences, they are still sentences, but because they convey meaning. But what they lack is that structure by means of which we identify more complex ideas or concepts, that is to say subject and predicate. What we can't do when we are dealing subjects. Because we are talking of word order. Immediately we speak of subject and predicate because we know a lot of grammar, and you suppose that everybody knows what a subject is, but I don't. What is subject?
The doer of the action.
I am a teacher. What action am I doing to be? I am nice.
No, what the predicate is referring to.
What is a predicate?
Everything, the problem is
What is
there.
said about the subject.
Even we define the predicate by saying that the predicate is everything that is not the subject. But what is the subject?
The predicate is the verb and the
Lorena,
complement.
doer of the action is correct, provided that the
It's not
verb
complete.
is, yes, the verb is a dynamic verb. If you say, write, somebody does the action, performs the action of writing. But there are those verbs which are not dynamic but stative. So then, to say that it is the doer, and it is not really the doer, it is the word that represents the doer of the action, is a partial definition. The subject is think of what kind of information you provide when you produce subject, a subject in a sentence.
It is the person or thing that the verb is talking about.
Well, the verb doesn't talk. But well,
Refers to.
About which we predicate.
we say something. Okay. The part of the sentence by means of which the speaker refers to what or who or whatever he's going to say something, that part, wherever it appears, is the subject. Okay? In English, normally it goes before the verb, but in Spanish, not necessarily. Okay? But what is it about? It represents the thing, the person, whatever, about which the speaker says something. Is a kind of title, introductory part of the sentence, by means of which the speaker announces that he's going to speak about that. Okay? And that's why we say that it has the value of old information or already known information, what we call theme. The subject is thematic. Okay? And the predicate is what the speaker wants really to inform, to say about that selected person, thing, or whatever thing it is. Okay, so that's why we say that the predicate says something about the subject. Normally, the predicate contains new or old information.
New
information, and it is called
Ring.
Okay, rhematic. The predicate is rhematic and the subject is thematic. Though there are cases when you can invert them for the sake of emphasis.
How do you spell that?
Sorry?
How do you spell that?
Rhematic. R-H-E-M-E. It comes from Greek. And theme, like theme.
Yeah.
T-H-E-M-E. Okay?
This is predicate.
Who spoke about this? The Greeks, Plato and Aristotle already. Okay, they were the first to speak about this question. So, in English, we always need to mention what is it that we are going to talk about, because the verb is uninflected practically to tell us so. What we mean by that is number and person, not the right identification of a person. If I say they, I have a certain notion, third person plural, but really I don't know if it was Peter, Mary, and Tom. If I want to know that, to identify them particularly, so then I have to use another expression, right? Well, so this is something characteristic of English. And we have to recognize basically that English is a poorly inflected language. We say poorly because it has inflections, but not so many. In other languages, the inflection suffices to show us inflection, different to show direct object position, another one to show indirect object position, and so on and so forth. So those are richer in that sense, because the more inflected the language, the less necessary it is for the language to repeat the subjects or to repeat certain functions. Is that clear? So, English is poorly inflected. It has very, very few inflections, okay? Here, Trask mentions it at the beginning as word endings. Really, inflections are word endings because we place them at the end of the word. The inflection appears there. So then, well, this very first part, okay, he speaks about highly inflected languages and not so much inflected languages, and he gives examples of, if I am not wrong, about taken from Vance to show different cases. Alright, but well, doesn't matter. You can read this at home, okay, so then we can go ahead. Then he mentions two different rules of English grammar to try to convince the reader that, okay, there exist rules that have to do with grammatical behavior. And then one of them has to do with what we call anaphora. Do you remember something about anaphora, cataphora, anaphoric, and cataphoric?
Yes.
Well, what?
One comes before and one comes after the reference.
Which one is it?
Cataphoric is after and anaphoric is before. The other way around.
Anaphoric is something that mentions or makes reference to something
Before.
before what?
Well, for the subject.
Explain that better.
For example, if
Before
I say,
the subject.
Peter has bought a car. He has bought a car. So then he refers to Peter.
So it refers to something already mentioned, okay? Something that has already been introduced in the context, in the sentence. That is anaphoric. So then, immediately we can guess that if we are dealing with an anaphoric element, which the anaphoric element will appear after the referent. It can't be the other way. Can it be? I mean, first we have the mentioning, the referent. Peter, da 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 da. Then you say he. Can you change the order?
Yes, but it will be a cataphoric reference.
That will be
Cataphoric.
And for example, if you have the example, it is raining.
It is raining.
Yes.
Raining.
Yes.
Ah.
It refers to the rain.
No, to the weather.
Or
To the day.
To the weather.
That's why I was asking you in surprise, because it is raining, it is empty. Doesn't mean anything. Or well, it doesn't mean anything, or it means that the weather in general. So,
If you say it is good for your heart to drink a glass of wine every day, that is cataphoric.
that would be cataphoric. That is to say, something that is going to be introduced later. And we have a certain word that is kind of announcing that something is coming. Okay, but let's go back to anaphoric reference, okay? So, which is the general rule when you are dealing with an anaphoric element? Which of the two come first? The referent or the anaphora? The anaphoric element.
In an anaphoric phrase?
The reference.
In English, the reference. Yes, we need the
In
reference.
Spanish everywhere, the referent. Okay, so the rule, the grammatical rule will say that will explain in a way that we cannot infer that order without changing
No,
the
we don't
meaning,
know
or at
what.
least making it ambiguous.
Yes,
Yes, we don't know who we're speaking
Okay.
about, for example.
But if you are talking probably in a everyday conversation, we will not make use of ambiguity so much, right? Because ambiguity confuses, and it takes time to decipher what the meaning etc. And then the rule in grammatical terms would run as an anaphor may not go precedent, comma its antecedent. And then he says that if you want to explain that in simple language, you will say that a word like she, the example would be after, because, can you read the examples?
Yes.
Okay.
Where the first one,
Page, yes, 29.
29, a rule of English grammar. Consider the next four sentences there.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
All of them consisting of the same words and all of them having apparently very similar structures. After Liza got up, she had a shower. Liza had a shower after she got up. After she got up, Liza had a shower. She had a shower after Liza got up. Now,
They have, sorry, Laura, they have similar meanings but not the same. Okay? And the interpretation differs. So, well then the explanation about pronouns, what is anaphoric, what is a reference, etc. as I did. On the following page, you have the technical way to express this. That is an anaphor may not go preceded, comma is antecedent. And then he says, well, let's have it in plain English, okay? That is the following explanation. Can you read it now? 2.14.
yes, a word like she that takes its meaning entirely from a second word in the same sentence, like Liza, cannot come before the second word if that second word is inside a subordinate clause.
That is the case after she had a shower. That would be the subordinate clause, right? Well, okay. This is one rule of grammar. And this kind of reasoning and this kind of grammatical rule exists as, let's say, a linguistic universal. It exists in UG. It goes, it will appear in English, in Spanish, everywhere. Okay, then you will carry on reading because it's a bit long, alright? So you read it at home, the rest, and then we go to the second rule that he gives us an example. He's giving these two rules as examples. The anaphora rule, that is to say that first you always have to mention the reference and then the antecedent, especially if it appears in the subordinate clause. And the second one is that whenever you have subordination by means of clauses, we cannot have a question that refers to the clause. Okay? So, I think that this one should be read because it is a bit more complex.
Sorry.
Can you start reading on page 32? Who wants to carry on reading? One of you? Well, okay.
What?
Page 32, another rule.
Lest you think that Linguistics rule might be a special case, let's look at another rule of English grammar. I call this one Ross's rule because it was first identified by the American linguist John Ross in 1967. Consider the following simple sentence. Liza bought a car. Nothing remarkable here, or so it seems. Now I'm going to construct a question that asks about that car by using the phrase which car. Which car did Liza buy? This sentence illustrates the usual way of forming questions in English, which in fact is rather complicated. The phrase which car has to come at the beginning of the sentence. Which car has to come at the beginning of the sentence. Whereas a car in 2.15 came at the end. The word did pops up. We have buy instead of bought, and so on. If you don't think this is complicated, ask someone who's learned English as a foreign language. But Ross's rule does not concern the way in which questions are formed, but rather the circumstances in which it's possible to form a question at all. Let's try to do the same thing with some further examples. Tim and Liza told him Larry bought a car yesterday. Which car did Tim say Liza told him Larry bought yesterday? She was describing a car to the police when it suddenly drove past. Which car was she describing to the police when it suddenly drove past? The guests who arrived in the car are ready to go home. Which car are the guests who arrived in ready to go home?
The one that has an asterisk, you know that by convention, in grammar and in linguistics, in language too, when you have an asterisk before a phrase, a word, or a sentence, that means that it is ungrammatical. Okay, so then, the first rule about anaphora, etc., was produced by Langacker, and you see that this is on the one hand, to show, to illustrate what? How we have to use reference when speaking. This second one has to do not exactly how is it that you obtain questions, but when you can make a question. And we will see that if you want to make a question out of an element that appears in a relative clause in subordination, we cannot do so. That's why the last one is incorrect. Okay? Well, now he explains that grammatically. Let's have a look.
Okay. Oops. Something has gone wrong with that last one, but why? I've followed all the usual rules for making English questions, and yet the result is no good. It's not a grammatical sentence of English. In fact, there is absolutely no way of asking the question that the ungrammatical 2.22 is trying to ask. That is, there is no question that correlates with a statement in 2.21, in complete contrast to what happened with the earlier examples. So, when we get round to stating the rules of for forming questions in English, which I won't attempt here, we'll have to complicate those rules by adding a rider. Except in cases like 2.22, in which you can't form a question at all. But what exactly are the cases like 2.22? What's special and different about them? This is the question that John Ross succeeded in answering in 1967. I'll give you his rule, but once again you may find it bewildering. A complex noun phrase is an item.
This is the way that he, Ross, put it forward in those days. What okay, it's too difficult to understand because it is, let's say, too technical, alright? A complex noun here means a noun which is contained in a subordinate clause, a noun that appears in a subordinate clause. And the notion of that noun contained in a subordinate clause, okay, is an item means that it behaves individually and it doesn't, it can't be incorporated to the general rules, for example, of making questions. So, to sum it up, because you see that I paid a look at the time and it's too late, you see that on the following page, you have the way to say that in plain English. That is, you can't ask a question about something that is inside a relative clause. I would say, this example, okay, belongs to a relative clause, but that is inside a subordinate clause. Never mind if it is relative noun or adverbial. Okay? So, then.
Cross out relative?
No, because it belongs to his example. That's why, but if you want to make it more general, then you say relative adverbial subordinate clause. But you see that when he says, the sentence was, which car are the guests who arrived in ready to go home? They arrived in a certain car, so that is the relative clause, right? So, on page 34, you read the rest in between and home. It says, Langacker's rule, which is technically called the precedent command condition, that is the one that an anaphor cannot precede its own referent. First you need the referent, then you may make use of an anaphoric element. Okay, that is Langacker's rule, another linguist. So he says, Langacker's rule and Ross So then he says that if we think of certain units such as words, we can classify them into two main categories, which are lexical words and
Functional.
we saw this. I mentioned this one of these last classes. And functional or grammatical words. Okay? What are lexical words and what are the others? Quickly, eh?
Lexical words carry meaning.
And grammatical words or functional words don't carry meaning.
No, they all
Yes,
have
they-
meaning.
In a context.
So all of them carry meaning. So then I cannot see the
Not by
difference between
themselves.
them.
But
Not in isolation.
it was that they, it was like a little bit like this.
Can
I
What
don't
is
remember
that?
the word.
Stairs. He says in isolation. What do you mean by that?
Not in
Remember
isolation.
that?
Lexical words carry
No, when
meaning.
she explained.
By
Even if
themselves.
they are alone and functional words meet other words.
Degree.
The grammatical words help us to relate the lexical ones in a sentence.
Uh-huh. Okay. They are languages. Okay? By means of which we link different words. Okay. Don't they have meaning in isolation?
Which ones?
Functional words or grammatical words? No? So
Yes, but
under doesn't
only
have
an
meaning.
idea.
Under doesn't have meaning. Doesn't have
Yes,
meaning.
but only an idea. They carry less of that. I don't remember the words, but you understand what I say.
All words have meaning.
It's difficult to explain. You are okay, you are right in the sense that in isolation they don't have so much meaning because their meaning is functional. We can explain the full meaning of them whenever we use them and we see them at work, okay? That is to say, interacting with the other words. Alright, so, do you remember that I told you once that when we speak of meaning, we have to say that there are different kinds of meaning. The meaning that we call lexical is the meaning that can be explained by means of other words. You can give a certain explanation or a synonym to the word, or you can, I don't know, see a certain image of that thing and then you can realize what it is. That is lexical meaning. And that meaning is the one that you can get in a dictionary, in a lexicon, in a dictionary, for example, or if you are somebody, the person will explain that to you. On the contrary, we have function words, which what they lack is this lexical meaning, not completely, because all words are meaningful. In a language, everything is meaningful, and all words are meaningful, but functional words don't have so much lexical meaning, and their meaning is revealed by means of their function. That is to say, they have very little lexical meaning. That's why under is not the same as on, or if is not the same as when or as since. Okay? So they have very little lexical meaning, and their force is given by the function they have. Introducing, for example, a prepositional phrase, or introducing a subordinate clause of which is adverbial, and so on. And on the contrary, lexical words have full lexical meaning. That's why we can explain them by means of other words, and they also have functional meaning. Lexical meanings are full words in all senses because they do carry this kind of meaning that is linguistic determiners in general, articles, quantifiers, numerals, blah blah blah. Determiners in general, all determiners. Prepositions.
The different conjunctions.
Conjunctions, that is to say connectives in general, coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, and all the other kinds of connectives. So I prefer to call them connectives, so then we don't differentiate and we don't have to enumerate. And there is another one. We said determiners in general, all determiners, all kinds of determiners, all kinds of connectives. So then we are summing them up, okay?
Auxiliaries?
They are in between both, because auxiliary verbs do carry meaning. It's not the same be as have, but they are always combined with lexical words, okay? So then we said pronouns, all kinds of connectives, all kinds of determiners. What else did you say? Prepositions.
Conjunction.
No,
Connectors.
conjunctions.
No, it's in connectives.
Connectives. And
Interjections.
interjections. Okay, these are the 5 ones, right?
I have 4.
Pronouns, determiners, prepositions, connectives, and interjections.
Determiners, interjections.
And pronouns.
All kinds of pronouns too. And what she said, auxiliary verbs remain in between, because on the one hand they are verbs and they have inflections as full verbs, okay? But they lack meaning. Their meaning depends on the combination in which they are expressed. For example, the auxiliary be combined with ing will convey the meaning of progression. Combined with past participle will convey the meaning of voice, passive voice, and so on. So that's why they are in between both. Okay? But these are 4 which are lexical, and the rest, all of them are functional words. Okay. Kinesically, you are telling me that time is up.
Yes.
You know, I don't have the watch today. I left it.
Yes, it's not
Okay. All right. Well, so